Hey everyone, Steven here with Lucky Casts, and today we are going to look at how to add TypeScript to your Lucky applications. Out of the box, Lucky comes with JavaScript, which is great, it does the job. However, any of you that are using Crystal now obviously have a bent towards typed languages, and the same reason that I came to Crystal in the first place. And TypeScript provides all the same advantages. My code is a little bit easier to reason about, it's easier to maintain, I can roll it out to production with more confidence, even though I may have fewer tests covering that code. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by using a bunch of tools that we'll go through at the end of the episode, but for right now, I just want to get a bunch of file changes into Git so that we can walk through the differences that you'd make if you wanted to apply these changes manually. So I'm going to use the Bloat gem, and this is going to essentially run some Ruby scripting that's going to set up everything we need for TypeScript in a Lucky application. So that includes adding a couple packages, setting up our tsconfig file, which is required for any TypeScript configuration, changing one line in our Webpack mix file that Lucky uses to configure your JavaScript and serve it up, rename our app.js file to app.ts, and we're going to skip ESLint for this episode. So with everything installed, let's jump over to our source control and walk through the changes so that you can replay these manually if you'd like. We'll start with our package.json. You can add these with a yarn add-d to get them into your dev dependencies, not into your runtime dependencies. And that's going to consist of a bunch of things. We've got TypeScript and tsloader, which are the core modules that we need just to be able to read TypeScript and turn it into JavaScript. Then we've got a couple of definitely typed packages. I'd recommend looking at that repository for more details, but essentially what this does is give TypeScript some hints about the types that are available both in a Webpack environment as well as in Node. So these are kind of your core things that you need for web development in general. Next up, let's go to tsconfig. This is something that I use out of the box on a lot of my projects. Specifically, the lines that may be problematic for you are strict and always strict, which are essentially turning on every check that you could possibly want in TypeScript and making it really hard to compile your code if it's not adhering to the TypeScript best practices. If you want to have a looser transition over to TypeScript from JavaScript, I'd recommend turning these to false or removing them altogether, and then it'll allow you to run any JavaScript as valid TypeScript and slowly convert your project. In our Webpack mix file, we have to make one change, which is this line going from a JS asset compilation in Laravel mix up to a TS asset compilation. And I say Laravel mix because this is another one of the genius things that the Lucky core team has done. Rather than building a Lucky custom Webpack wrapper, they're leveraging an available package in the Laravel community called Laravel Mix, which wraps all of this functionality and gives a bunch of plugins. It's what makes adding TypeScript so straightforward for a Lucky application, because I can literally tell it, instead of rendering JavaScript from app.js to public.js app.js, instead render TypeScript from app.ts into public.js app.js. We'll skip our yarn.lock because that doesn't matter for this video, and we'll go into our app.ts. So you'll note that there are no file changes here. All that's happened is I renamed the file from app.js to app.ts, and that's simply to support the webpack.mix file change that I made just a second ago. With all those changes made, I can go here and run Lucky Dev, and sure enough, we'll see that our Webpacker spins up, compilation finishes, and our Lucky app serves successfully, meaning that TypeScript is ready to go. So as promised, let's look into what makes that bloat command work, how it actually gets applied, and what the script was that I ran. So here's the bloat gem. It's a very small wrapper that I made around Thor, and essentially you call a with command, and you pass it a URL, and it's going to apply that URL using Thor. It's pretty straightforward. And let me go over to the RailsBytes here, and we can see the source of this specific one. So Lucky TypeScript is the one that I ran and maintain. You can find these by going to all templates on RailsBytes.com and searching Lucky. You'll find a bunch of RailsBytes maintained by me that aren't actually for Rails, they're for Lucky. We'll go to TypeScript, and then let's just look through the source. So first up, we add a couple of yarn packages. Then we set up that tsconfig file. And here's the content. If you want to do it manually, you can just copy and paste this directly into your tsconfig.json. Next, we convert Webpack Mix to TypeScript, and that's using a simple replace here of Webpack Mix.js changing the .js line to a .ts line. Next up, we move the file using a shell command, and then we do that ESLint setup, which again is not necessary, it's strictly optional. And it's just that easy. We can set up Lucky with TypeScript instead of JavaScript and have typed languages throughout our entire code base, giving us more confidence when we're deploying code, an easier time maintaining code, and an easier time sharing that code and making it understandable between different members of our team. I hope this has demystified some of that conversion process. And until next time, this has been Steven with LuckyCasts. Have a great day.